Hi, and welcome to FireTech Talk. I'm your host, Noah. Today we're here with Aaron Johnson to discuss about how change can be affected through codes and standards. Aaron works with clients on a daily basis to come up with innovative solutions for complex fire and life safety issues. Aaron, thanks so much for being here today.
Yeah, no, thanks for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. Well, let's jump right into it. So Aaron, can you explain how NFPA standards get used in the ICC arena? Are they requirements extracted from the IBC and IFC, or are the NFPA documents adopted by reference? And also, how does the fire code adoption process work within individual states?
So the ICC sometimes references NFPA standards. So you have a difference between a code and a standard, right? So the code is the overarching thing. The code tells you what you need to do, but a standard tells you how to do it. So for example, the ICC publishes the IBC, the International Building Code. So that will tell you that, this building needs to be sprinklered.
Right.
But how is it going to be sprinkled? Well, it needs to be sprinkled in accordance with NFPA 13. So NFPA 13 tells you how to install, test, and maintain that sprinkler system for that building. So that's kind of how they interact. And then the second part of your question was, how does the code adoption process work, right, within states? So I don't know every state, but the process is similar with some differences. So I'm from Florida. So the way our state works, we adopt NFPA 1 and 101 and combine them to make our Florida Fire Prevention Code, and we've adopted the 2018 edition of the IBC for our building code. So states have to adopt these codes. They can adopt codes that are already published by the NFPA or the ICC. They can write their own. They can choose to use those codes in their published form, or they can take out sections, just use whatever parts they want. So in Florida, we adopt those those are a minimum standard, what we've adopted. And so that means every jurisdiction in the state has to comply at least with that. And then local jurisdictions can create amendments or ordinances that strengthen that code, but they can't do anything to take away from it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So kind of continuing off that, how does subject matter experts get involved in updating NFPA codes and standards? And can you give us some insights about the makeup of NFPA technical committees and task groups that tend to develop new chapters on evolving technologies?
All right, so anybody can get involved in the NFPA code making process. Anybody can submit what's called as a public input. So the codes will open for a period of time and accept input. That's from the public. Anybody can submit. That's a great way to get involved. On top of that, you can be directly involved. You can join a committee. Anybody can join a committee. It's an application process, then you get accepted to be on that committee. And so the NFPA, they have a certain percentage of how that committee is made up of people. So they don't want all manufacturers writing that code or on that committee. So they want it to be pretty evenly distributed. And I'm probably not going to remember all of the categories, but some of them are installer, manufacturer, enforcers, which is like your government officials. You have your users and your special experts, which would be like consultants. And then you have your laboratory type of people that work in the labs, like UL, those type of people as well. So that's kind of how those are made up. Those committees are made up.
So Aaron, can you give us some insight about the makeup of NFPA technical committees and task groups that tend to develop new chapters on evolving technology?
Yeah, so that's another great way to get involved in the code process, is to be on a task group. You don't have to be a member of NFPA or committee. Anybody can participate on a task group. So a lot of times a task group will be formed if let's say the committee has a direction that the code's going in, or they've received a lot of feedback on a certain issue. They'll develop a task group made up of volunteers to research that issue and maybe submit some proposals. So for example, I've been on a couple of task groups, but one I was on most recently is the NFPA 418, which is the standard on heliports. They created a task group for something called vertiports. So vertiports is for a futuristic technology which will be here in the next couple of years, called urban air mobility. So it's for electric aircraft. And so the task group was formed to create and develop the fire protection requirements for the infrastructure for that. So that was a task group, and that brought in a bunch of different people that you don't normally see on an FPA code or standard. For example, that brought in some of these aircraft manufacturers, these vertiport developers, and then you had a lot of people from the flight side more than the fire side even. So again, task group is it's a great way to get involved in the process, and you get to see a whole different perspective, and it moves that whole code development process forward.
Absolutely. So you kind of touched on it there a little bit, but as a follow-up, can anybody with a good idea submit proposed changes to NFPA codes and standards, or do you have to be a member of a technical committee or a task force?
Yep, anybody can submit. So I was given a presentation earlier on this, or I was talking earlier, and you know, if you're a user of that, right? You're the guys. You're a technician. You're out. You're servicing equipment or extinguishers or whatever it is, and you're doing that through your daily duties. You're the one that has the best insight onto the applicability of that code. And so you might be going about your business and realize, hey, the code says to do this, but that doesn't really work in all practicality for the job that I'm trying to do. So that person should submit a public input that says, here's a better way to do this. Or, you know, some people throughout the course of their job, they come up with a new way to do something, or they invent a new tool that helps that job go faster. Well, they can create a public input and submit that to that code to have that tactic or method and put it into the code.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, kind of going off of that, from a fire inspector standpoint, it is almost impossible to inspect every building, right? Mm-hmm. Can you explain to us a little bit about the relationship between a fire inspector and technicians that perform ITM on systems, emergency lights, fire extinguishers? Are there certain expectations between the two in order to ensure compliance to codes and building safety?
So I don't think there's a set answer for that. I think it's going to be different based on the jurisdiction. Different inspectors and AHJs, they have a different mentality and a way that they do things. Sure. So the way they interact might be different, right? They might just go in, do the inspection, leave it with the business owner, and then that's it. And the service provider, that's just between the business owner and them. And the fire official might not ever get involved. But not everybody does that. So I used to, when I was doing inspections and working for a municipality, I used to always go tell business owners that I'm there to be their business partner. I want them to succeed as much as they do. So I would always try to be involved and try to work with those providers and say, how can we do this? Well, instead of just saying, hey, here's the violation, I'd also come up with some solutions to the business owner, or I'd be happy to meet with that contractor on site or whatever they needed to do to accomplish that change. So I think that's going to vary jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but I think the preferable method is like that, understanding that as an AHJ, a government official, a fire code official, I'm the partner in their success because I want my community to thrive and I want that person to thrive.
Yeah, I mean, you're a partner and a resource. You're not just writing, a ticket or a violation. You're actually helping provide public education around fire safety, which we both know is super important right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Aaron, you've obviously written several books for the fire protection industry. How do you decide on which topics need attention, and why have you written about those certain topics?
So I started writing because when I was doing a plan review, or if I saw something on inspection, I might have a question, right? So I started writing a blog, and I figured if I had that question, somebody else would. So it started as a blog, and then I wrote some articles, but I kind of took that same philosophy into my books, right? The things that people were asking about, or I saw a need for them, then I would start to research that and put that into a book form. And sometimes people would ask me those questions, and I started realizing that I had a lot of content that I'd written over the years, and so I kind of could compile those similar posts and content that I'd written and kind of clean them up a little bit and put those into a book. So that was easy and quick way to get out there, and it's a great resource. So I love being part of the fire protection industry. I've been doing this for 15 years, and so I always try to give back as much as I can to what we're doing.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Well, I have certainly learned a lot from this talk. I really appreciate you coming in today.
No, thanks for the invitation. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. And for all of you guys watching at home, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe to the Brooks YouTube channel for more content just like this. We'll see you next time.